This is a podcast which does not shy away from difficult and vulnerable topics. The content is of an adult nature and we do swear at times.
Welcome to the Autistic Licensed podcast. I'm Siana and I'm in Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland.
I'm Leo in London.
We invite you to listen in on our conversations as we experiment with unmasking in an autistic space. We talk about what it means to discover we're autistic as adults, especially with established careers as therapists. We want people to know that autistic therapists exist and to broaden the conversation about neurodiversity. You're so welcome to join us, whoever you are and wherever in the world you are. We hope you'll find something of interest and connection here.
Actually, that's a good point. Let me pour myself a hot drink. Oh, that's the last of today's coffee. Not very nice coffee.
Well, it's the end of the day, isn't it?
No, I mean the actual coffee's not very nice.
Oh dear, how'd that happen?
I tried out something called wonky coffee, which is where they kind of just get all the beans that the top-owned roasters don't want and blend them all up, and it's supposed to be really very good. It's not.
But it's not. It's a kind of an unfortunate name as well.
Well, but it's like, don't Tesco, one of the supermarkets has, is it wonky vegetables or something, the ones that don't conform to the right size and shape.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that was an actual name of
I think it's a whole cultural thing at the moment. So you get it for, much cheaper, and it helps out reducing waste. And so it's a good thing to do, which is why I tried it out, but it's just not very nice.
Okay.
It's drinkable.
So, hello, lovely listeners.
Hello, you lot. Here we are again.
Nice spring. Leo has a spring cold.
Hooray!
And it's there you are. There was a croak in your voice there. I was going to say.
Now you've got the headphones on. You can hear that my voice is croaky, my nose is blocked, and this is how I sound. This is the voice you put on when you ring work to tell them you can't come in.
Thankfully, neither of us ever has to do that.
Never again. Never again. I've got a very kind boss.
Yourself?
That's right.
I'm not sure that you are always very kind to yourself.
Actually, you do say that, don't you? Yes. Yes.
Yeah, maybe kinder than some, but not as kind as others.
I take that. It's a common point that you. See, I can't find my words. It's a familiar. Thank you. You even helped me with that. You see, it's a familiar trope of yours about me.
Trope?
Is that a bad word?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, hang on. Now let me look it up, because I think I've been using it wrong then ever since I heard it. I thought it was just like something that gets repeated a lot and becomes familiar and popular.
I think it's got it's kind of like a stereotype or something. It's not a very nice way of saying that.
Online definition: a figurative or metaphorical use of a word or expression. And this is what I mean. The second meaning is a significant or recurrent theme or a motif. So that, I think, is my understanding of it, but that is the secondary use. That actually, so the example they give is both clothes and illness became tropes for new attitudes towards the self. Specific.
I don't really get that, but I don't think it's really a compliment to say that someone uses a trope or I don't know how you.
Okay.
I do think it's a nice thing to say.
So anyway, theme is what I meant, I suppose. It's a common theme. It's a familiar theme. It's something that we return to sometimes. So I think that's what I meant. So I need to revisit and edit my use of the word trope.
Yes.
In that case.
Especially with spiky people like me who will say, What do you mean?
What did you just call me? You call me a troper?
Call me a troper. Maybe we should just make up that word and start calling people troopers.
ABBA wrote a song about one of those, didn't they?
No, that's a troop.
Trooper.
Anyhow,
how's spring for you so far?
Spring for me so far. Well, interestingly, I could just like plunge into something a little bit deep.
Why don't you?
Why don't I? I did notice the change into spring, and I thought, yeah, I like that. I'm ready for that. We both like the change, don't we, of the seasons? So yes. It's a trope of yours to
you call me a troper.
Yeah.
How dare you?
So be careful, you don't have the energy for laughing.
I know.
So I was like, how do you feel about spring, Siana? And I thought, yes, okay, March and April are my favourite. And then in May's okay, but not the same as March and April. Then June is, I'm tired. July and August is too hot. So that's the summer. So I don't like the summer. The sun's too bright in the summer and it's too hot. Then November and December, as everybody knows, there's not enough light for me. Then I get depressed. And I like January for different reasons, because I can get lots done, worky things done. But I like September too. So I think it's a tie between March and September as my top month. And then, but April is quite high as well. And I don't mind October until it gets towards the very end of October. So anyway, I felt the need to check in about that. And because I did that, I thought...
Tune in next week for the uppers, downers and movers in the seasons and months top 12.
So I only do this like twice a year, probably. Anyhow, my point that I was coming on to was that would have just made me be quite positive about the time of year, because it might be like one of my top months in like one of my happiest months. But I feel really tearful or emotional, and I don't really know why. Like the last couple of days, and I'm not really a very emotional person in that way. I don't cry easily, unlike you.
Unlike me, you're right.
But I don't know why. But I'm like open to it and wondering about it. Like, it doesn't really seem very congruent with this time of the year and what I'm saying about this time of the year. Unless it's a kind of almost like a relief thing, or almost like you kind of get through and then you feel things. Like I used to get migraines after stress, so it's like you're already through something, then you feel it. Don't know.
And are you talking about an emotional response, reaction, as well as, or apart from actual, you said I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you know what it is you're feeling that's tearful? I'm not playing into this autistic stereotype of not understanding which emotions are which kind of thing, although that is also obviously a common experience.
So I know that, like, I must be on the brink of feeling something, and it feels like a kind of a tearfully kind of a thing. But I mean, in proportion to me, doesn't mean that any tears have actually been shed, just to clarify. But I can I can feel it, and it's not that common for me to feel that way. And then it's noticeable because I guess it wouldn't be like an expected thing to feel that way whenever it's brighter and things feel a bit more easeful in terms of it just doesn't feel dark and heavy and, you know, I'm not feeling like I've got a shitload of stuff that needs to be done, or I'm not pushing myself to do stuff. So
there might be something that's about transition, or the relief, the relieving of one season state before moving into the next one. Like, I'll bring my cold into it, why not? Like, we will often come down with a bugger or something, not when we're overloaded and really busy, but when it stops, and then we're vulnerable, and I'm sure that's I can relate to that in terms of emotions as well. And if you've had also a productive and, you know, usefully busy time, which you were just saying,
which I have.
Absolutely have.
Yeah.
And then there's a moment when there's something, you know, comes to fruition or whatever, and then everything that brought underlying that can come out, and that makes sense. Or it's just we don't know why, and that's how it is.
Well, you're right, though.
It does bring me to I don't want to broaden things out. I'd rather stay with, you know, you and your experience if you want to, but maybe just to park this. It so happens, as it always does when we have these conversations, that there have been quite a few therapeutic conversations with autistic people recently around crying, funnily enough. It's just these things happen, don't they, in these little waves. Because there is, you know, there's the Mr. Spock stereotype of the cold, unemotional autistic person. But I hear people often talking about it. Often this comes up in terms of endings. So,
I can hear Molly.
And is that actually coming out? That normally doesn't come out on the Zoom, does it? Yes, she is barking at the moment. I'm just going to close my door.
Okay.
There we go. Yes. Because that will be hard to edit out. And if it's the odd one, that's lovely to have in. But if she's going to do it for 10 minutes, which does sometimes happen, that might be a bit disruptive. So people talking about difficult feelings. I can't cry, or I should be crying at this time because everybody else is, because there's been this and that loss. But something that seems to be common, familiar, is I do hear a lot of people, autistic people, you know, talking about, well, I don't cry when I feel I should, or I don't show the emotions that I feel that I should because everyone else is. We've talked about that before. But they can become very often, you know, very emotional at very specific and usually kind of fictional things in themes in films, pieces of music. This is definitely the case for me as well. It's often quite grand themes. So things that are really to do with core values in a film, you know, a big crescendo of something about a proud moment or a tragic moment. But there's something that's different when it is much more symbolic. Is that the right word? That seems to trigger some of us into much greater emotion, you know, visible emotional responses than the actual things that we experience in our lives, if that might be, you know, loss or heartbreak or rejection or, you know, professional stuff, things that...
I cry uncontrollably whenever I'm scared. Like I really cannot control the tears when I'm scared. And that looks way, way, way more dramatic to the people around me, because it's usually something I'm scared of and they're not scared of. So I definitely cry in those situations, but I don't cry out of sadness or hurt. But
and what about representative things then? Cultural stuff, films, music, TV. Are there particular themes or...
I cry when something's really think it's when I see things that I don't have. So like really like joyous occasions, or like, you know, even like just like the family connections when something's real, even if it's like unreal stuff as well. Yeah, but I think it's more joyous stuff than sad stuff, actually. And I do think that's because there's a longing for something that I haven't experienced. Yeah. And there's a lot of things I can't look at and I can't watch. So but it's not that it would make me cry, but it would disturb me. But yeah, I think it's very idiosyncratic. It's not that there's an impossibility, and it's not that there's some kind of shortage of tears, because when they're, in my way, when they're called, you know, in those things, if they're called for, they'll come. But they won't. Like, it's enough for me to feel this feeling, to know that means that there's emotion there connected to sadness or loss, but I don't need to see the tears come, and I don't even know that they will. If I cry and don't know what it is, that will be a big thing, but I'm still quite far away from that. I just know there's something there. Yeah.
To stick with weeping, crying, wailing, you know, whatever. To go back to Woody, when Woody died, it was definitely, you know, I didn't agonise and struggle as I thought I would about it. It was definitely the right thing. It was really good. It was the best death he could have had, I think, you know, and it was nice, and there's a weird word to use, but it was. After once the vet had left, and I was just sat with him, we had about an hour, as I've said before the driver came to take him to be cremated. And I suppose about half an hour into that, I just wailed. Wailed for maybe a few minutes. And I didn't feel that I wanted or needed to suppress it. I knew exactly what it was. It was 100% congruent. And when that had come to an end, I'd expressed I wasn't expressing. Something came out. What needed to come out had come out, and that was so far enough. I mean, that's not to say I don't feel the loss and I'm not terribly sad a lot, but that kind of actual real, it was so visceral and almost, I suppose, animal, you know. That's quite rare. But it did what it needed to do. But the other thing as well that's at work is gendered stuff, conditioning. So that, you know, it was interesting that you talked about that combination of fear and uncontrollable weeping. For, you know, again, stereotypically thinking of gender in a binary sense, for the sake of this, you know, talking about conditioning, boys are allowed to be angry and girls are not allowed to be angry. Yeah. Girls are allowed to cry and boys are not allowed to cry. You know, these are the very, very common conditions. And I see this crossover all the time, where I can remember a couple of instances in different parts of my career where at work, a female colleague was very, very angry with a boss, and they ended up in a closed off office, but a glass one, you know, having a screaming row. I mean, she really did not control, but she ended up crying. Yeah. And that made her, because I spoke to her after, that made her even more angry, because that wasn't congruent. She was trying, you know, she was expressing rage, and what came out was this supposedly, again, stereotypical weak response of weeping, because, again, as I would interpret it, that's the gender conditioning of expressing a strong emotion. For a girl, is to cry, because that's the acceptable one. And then you got it the other way round, where, again, stereotypically, etc., all the caveats, men shouldn't cry. They also shouldn't be scared. And the example that always set in my mind was when I was in India, and I was in this little fishing village where I was staying. There was a tiny little internet cafe, and this is on the coast. And all along the beach, there are kind of packs of dogs, and they're fine, but they will set each other off barking. If you're frightened of dogs, and some people are, that's scary. And I just remember being in this internet cafe, and this enormous, when I say enormous, I'm talking about bodybuilder, enormous, muscly, huge guy running in, and he was just swearing because he'd been chased by some dogs. Yeah. And I'll fucking kill him! I'll fucking kill him! And all he could express was aggression and fury, but he was terrified. Again, it's that reverse, it's that incongruence because of that gendered conditioning, that it wasn't okay for him to say, I'm really scared, somebody help me. What what just came out, obviously not on purpose, just what came out, was anger and violence and aggression. Yeah. And I don't think that we... what do I think? I don't have a thought about this. I wonder if those things apply less to an autistic personality. That those conditionings work in less stereotypically. Or maybe it's that's one of the reasons maybe we don't express emotion in the neurotypically expected way, because those bits of conditioning are also just as kind of alien to us as so much else of the neurotypical world.
So, like, whenever I get angry, well, no, a certain quality of angry, there's different types, but there's a certain one where I know that how it affects me is it makes me really red, and it can almost look like timidity, but it's really not timidity. It's actual proper anger. But it doesn't look like it. So I don't think that necessarily you could unpack that. I mean, it could be something to do with a shaming experience, or anger's not okay. You could surmise all sorts of things like that, or that could be just my expression of anger, my expression of that type of anger. And so it's all very complex, isn't it, for each individual person, what that feels.
It is an individual person, and I think what I was saying is that it is multi-layered, and that's why I talked about a kind of a autistic versus allistic, but also a male conditioning versus a female conditioning, and then you've got whatever your life experiences have been. And yes, you brought shame into it as well, and that's a really important one as well, that regardless of gender in whatever way we look at it, or neurotype, there is something, especially of course as adults, about any visible sense of a loss of control, particularly towards tears, and that it is still taboo. We had a conversation earlier today when we talked about loneliness being a taboo. That wasn't an okay thing to talk about in personal experience somehow. There aren't many of those left, really, in these, at least in pockets, psychologically enlightened times. But crying, it's a rare thing in real life with adults. And we do actually, to go back to this thing about reacting to films and television in that way, that's the biggest... That's where you see it most, is in a fictionalized, unacted way. Yeah. How many times, if you're watching a documentary or an interview with somebody and they get emotional, the first thing they do is apologise and try to stop it. Yeah.
Is there anything else about... Well, it doesn't have to be about the spring, but anything else.
I wonder if there is, to tie the two things together, I wonder if there is an overlap of heightened emotional responses to things.
And to transition?
Yeah, exactly. That's just what I was thinking. I wonder, and I suspect it's true, that I am more emotionally raw and vulnerable in those two seasons, in autumn and spring as well. I think that's probably true.
That's really interesting. I've never thought about that. But whenever you said that, and I thought, is that just transition? Is it just transition? that's weird and hard and strange,
but also stimulating in the
but
way that
attractive
parts of
as
us
well.
also need. And it does highlight that ADHD clash sometimes. There's the regular predictability is disturbed, but in a way that's stimulating to the other part of me that really enjoys something being refreshed. autisticlicense@gmail.com.
Oh yeah, contact us. We have an email address.
What do you make of all of that?
Thank you, by the way, for all of your contacts over the last wee while. Obviously, because we haven't been recording, we haven't been saying to people, thank you for getting in touch, or here's what they say. So, we are grateful that you've kept in touch with us. Yeah, so here's the thing that's maybe a little bit of a bridge coming into my mind is around spring and newness and new projects. Does that kind of it does kind of happen every year for me. I've seen it several years where I feel that kind of way, and sometimes I've been working on something in like that second half of winter, and then it kind of comes together. And for me, that this year is like the circle stuff.
Yes. Do you want to give a
no, because I've got a train of thought.
Stepping back.
I might come back to that, but I don't want to go on to that now. And maybe as well, it's that it's like maybe checking in on the podcast, and we kind of started a few things. So I remember like in September time, whenever we came back to do the second season, and we'd said, what are our kind of hopes? And we talked about having guests on, and we talked about the groups, and we kind of said, oh, it didn't really work when we tentatively put out this idea of having a group, like a kind of a let's all talk about what we might want out of a group. And that didn't come together for all sorts of reasons. And then we kind of just let that be in a kind of a hope that somehow it would come clear or come together. So I don't really like forcing anything. Or it felt a little bit forced, whereas the guest thing, it's like kind of being in the flow of something. Like all we had to do was just mention it, and people came, and it's all fitted nicely, that it hasn't felt like there's been too many people, or like that the timing has felt like there's too much to do, or it hasn't fitted in, or people, it's all come together really naturally, and I can't really do anything unless it happens like that. Otherwise it feels like a demand. And I wonder whether the groups thing is also like there's kind of an opportunity at this time of the year. And I bet that if we looked back, we probably were talking about it at this time of the year last year.
Yeah, maybe, yes.
And maybe it's kind of a cyclical thing that's back in my mind again. And there's been a few emails, I suppose, over the months from people that have said, actually, I would be interested in something like that, hasn't there?
Yeah,
which we should have kind of starred somewhere along the line, and we could certainly find those again. But I guess if there's people out there that are feeling any kind of momentum, I guess, that's going, I could do that now. I've got energy for that now. I want to chat about that now. And I don't mean chat about it as a guest, although you can, of course, come on as a guest and talk about community. We can do that. But if you want to speak to us about it, either in written form or, in another way.
Lovely. And you used the word energy. And that's just what I was also going to add in, that as well as the cycles, the seasonal cycles of emotional rawness, or the things that we've been talking about, and the stimulation of transition, but there's also definite rhythms to high and low energy, I think. that we share at those particular times of year as well.
Yes.
There is something about movement as well, I suppose, that absolutely goes with transition.
How is your energy now?
It's calmer. It's lower in terms of I'm sleepier, I'm tireder, but I am, slower, and I have that lovely co-regulation thing that we often talk about, or that I often talk about. So yes, it's an improvement for sure.
Physically, with not being well.
Well, physically, it's the last couple of days, 3 days, I reckon, I've woken up and gone, turning point. There we go.
Yeah, you have.
and it's because it's the fucking morning and I've just had however many hours sleep. Why don't I learn? And then it's, suddenly at 3 o'clock you go, I shouldn't have gone to the shops just then. I now need to sleep for 10 hours.
Did you sleep this afternoon?
I didn't sleep, no. I had a couple of hours what I would call rest, but it definitely wasn't sleeping. I didn't have a need for that. I just needed to rest. But now I do feel, what are we? It's like kind of 20 to 8 in the evening. And I now don't feel kind of anxious about I'm too tired. I'm not going to get enough rest because I'm now resting now. Mm-hmm. It's nice.
Why would you feel anxious that you weren't going to get?
Because I'm not well. And then,
okay.
that kind of tends to be the dominant thing. And then, no kind of rest is going to make me feel better tomorrow. But now I don't feel that.
Okay.
I actually feel like it'll be the rest of the evening and the night will be very restful, and that's nice. It's a nice prospect now. So I'm feeling nice and calm and even, and my heart rate is at 75.
What does that mean?
That's perfect for me. That's my regular resting heart rate.
I was just going to say, I didn't know you would be anxious about getting rest.
I don't think I've ever said that out loud before or even consciously thought it, but I think that's an anxiety that I will often get if I feel depleted or something physically.
Yeah.
And I don't trust that I will sleep well. And now I'm saying it out loud, this is a historic thing. This is when I had an undiagnosed sleep disorder and I had sleep apnea for decades without knowing it and wasn't getting enough sleep. And I just remember particularly when I was working at the BBC, I particularly remember that every day about 3-4 o'clock, my energy would just plummet and I'd be desperate to sleep. Absolutely does. And I would make a deal with myself every single day. As soon as I get home, I'm just going to have something light to eat and then I'm going to go to bed and I'm going to sleep. And every single day, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening, there's the second wind. I don't want to sleep. There's not enough stimulation going on every day for years. And I think that's all this is it's the hangover to not being able to trust that I will get the rest when I need it, which these days I generally do. And I suppose it's just highlighted because I'm not well and I'm feeling depleted and I've got way less energy than I would normally have. So there's a background of, anxiety that rest isn't going to work properly, but it does, and that's good to be reminded consciously of that. Yeah,
I've never seen that in you, because I've always thought that you're good at resting, but maybe if there is.
I am these days. But you're right. I am these days, and then.
Then you don't get so anxious about not sleeping at night. I guess that's what I see in you normally, but maybe not whenever you're unwell. But normally, I think you're not somebody like when I used to really have really, really bad sleep at night. Then is it any better now? I don't know. I don't think I stress about it as much now. But whenever I used to stress about it, it was definitely that stress of I'm not going to be able to cope if I don't go to sleep now.
Exactly.
And obviously, I always did. I always did cope. So then I learned to tell myself that actually I don't need sleep, and that was another way of. And actually, the more that I told myself that, actually, the better I slept. Still, kind of all relative, but. Once I got rid of that anxiety of I won't be able to function if I don't get such and such a length of time. And then that got past that kind of anxiety. And I don't tend to have that anymore now. So, is there anything more? No, I wasn't going to finish just yet. I was going to say, is there anything more that we want to say before we bid au revoir?
Only if, well, first of all, whether or not you want to mention circles and that's a thing that people can look at and think about.
I have just launched my website, and there will be a specifically autistic circle that will be setting up. So I could put a link to my website, and then interested people could have a look on that. I'm starting with online intro circles. So that means that if people are interested, could go to those. Because I'm facilitating, it will be autistic friendly, but they will not be solely autistic spaces. Those introductory circles won't. But then hopefully in time there will be a completely autistic circle, which will be wonderful.
And if you don't know specifically what Siana's referring to when she talks about circles, then I would definitely say, link in the description, her description of the concept and what it is and what it would be like is really good and very, very easy to absorb. So have a look. On the
website, yes. And I did an Instagram thing. So I've never used Instagram, but the people that I was training with were talking about how great Instagram is for promotion. Okay. So I set up Circles with Siana Instagram. It's got 17 followers. So I did this recording thing for that. But if people want to see me talking about circles, wonderful, that's on there as well.
Another link in the description. Great.
And you can put a wee link into that. Circle is just really what it sounds like. It's a kind of a gathering of people, and we kind of listen and hear each other, and it's not therapy, but it's very mutual, and you've got to want to listen as well as talk. But there's something about just coming together in an intentional way that is different. It brings something.
Sounds wonderful. It does sound wonderful.
And you've got a podcast episode coming out on another podcast by the kind of time that this might come out. So you might have to link that too.
I'm guesting on behalf of Siana and I, because it is about this podcast.
No, it's not on behalf of me and you. You did it yourself. Cause
I did it myself, but we were both invited, and it's because of this podcast that anyway, the podcast is Disability Empowerment Now, and I think my episode's coming out at the end of March. I'll put a link in the description to that podcast as well. I had a lot of fun. I'm not sure that I want it publicised yet because I cannot remember anything that I said.
We can cut this out.
The host, Keith, and I just had a laugh. I just remember really enjoying his company and laughing a lot. But what I actually talked about or said, I'm not so sure. And I don't think he edits very much. I think he just records the conversation and out it goes when it's time.
Thank you for being with us, lovely listeners.
Speak to you again soon, I hope.
Yeah, we do hope to speak to you again soon. There's another 3 guest recordings in our diary.
Yes.
But we may manage to put a couple of just us episodes out in between time over the next couple of months.
Lovely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Autistic License podcast. You can connect with us via Instagram, Facebook at autisticlicense.com, or by email at autisticlicense@gmail.com. And we spell license the British way, LICENCE. We also have a thriving Facebook community. Search for Autistic License Siana and Leo, or click on the link in the show notes.